What happens when country music royalty meets morning television controversy? Today, we're diving into one of the most explosive moments in recent talk show history. When Reba McEntire, the queen of country herself, reached her breaking point during what was supposed to be a friendly chat on Today with Jenna and Friends. What began as a routine promotional interview quickly spiraled into a verbal showdown that left everyone stunned and Reba walking off set in fury. The morning started like any other at the Today Show studios. Reba arrived to discuss her upcoming tour and new music, expecting the usual light-hearted questions and friendly banter. Jenna Hager was filling in as the primary host that day, joined by her rotating panel of co-hosts for what the network had billed as a cheerful entertainment segment. The cameras were rolling, the audience was settled, and everything seemed perfectly normal as Jenna opened the interview with her signature warmth. Well, good morning everyone, and welcome back to Today with Jenna and Friends. I am absolutely thrilled to have country music legend Reba McEntire here with us this morning, she said brightly. Reba, thank you so much for joining us. You look absolutely radiant, as always. Reba smiled politely, though she sensed a subtle tension in Jenna's tone that hadn't been there during their off-camera chat. Thank you for having me, Jenna. It's always a pleasure to be here with you all, she replied. But before the conversation could settle into the expected rhythm, Jenna pivoted. Now, Reba, we definitely want to talk about your incredible new tour and all the exciting projects you have coming up, she began, her voice shifting to a more serious register. But first, I have to ask you about something that's been making headlines recently. There have been some pretty significant discussions in country music about authenticity and staying true to traditional values. Some critics have suggested that certain artists, maybe even veterans like yourself, have been compromising their roots for mainstream appeal. How do you respond to that? The question hit the studio like a thunderclap. Reba's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing slightly as she processed what had just been said. This wasn't the friendly promotional interview her team had arranged. This felt like an ambush, and the air in the studio suddenly turned heavy. I'm sorry, what exactly are you suggesting? Reba asked evenly, her tone calm but sharp enough to cut through the tension. Are you implying that I've somehow betrayed country music? Jenna's eyes widened slightly, realizing she might have touched a nerve. But instead of backing off, she pressed forward. Oh no, not at all, she insisted. I'm just curious about your thoughts on the evolution of country music and whether you feel pressured to change with the times. I mean, some of your recent collaborations have been pretty far from your traditional sound. One of the co-hosts, clearly uncomfortable, tried to redirect the conversation with a nervous laugh. Maybe we should talk about the tour dates fans are really excited to see you perform live again, she said. But Reba wasn't letting it go. Let me get this straight, Reba said, leaning forward slightly, her voice calm but loaded with intensity. You invited me here to promote my tour and new music, and instead you're questioning my integrity as an artist. You're suggesting that I've somehow sold out? Jenna tried to defend herself, her tone turning defensive. That's not what I said. I'm just trying to have a meaningful conversation about the industry. Meaningful conversation. Reba repeated, her voice rising just enough to command the room. Honey, I've been making music since before you were born. I've sold over 56 million albums worldwide. I've won every major award this industry has to offer, and I've stayed true to my roots every single day of my career. So when you sit there and question my authenticity, you better come with receipts. The tension in the studio was unbearable. Camera operators exchanged uneasy glances. Producers whispered frantically into their headsets, and the co-hosts sat frozen, wishing they could vanish. It was live television unraveling in real time, and no one could stop it. Jenna, flustered but still clinging to her composure, tried to smooth things over. Reba, I think there might be a misunderstanding here. I have nothing but respect for your career and your contributions to music. But by then, the damage was done. The Queen of Country had made her point, and the interview would go down as one of the most unforgettable moments in morning show history. "Oh, is that what that was?" Reba shot back, her Oklahoma accent sharpening as her anger rose. "Because it sure sounded like you were reading from some prepared list of gotcha questions designed to stir up controversy. Is this what passes for journalism these days?" The tension in the studio was unbearable. One of the co-hosts quickly tried to defuse the situation. "Ladies, maybe we can take a step back and talk about something positive," she said, her voice tight with forced cheer. "Reba, your fans would love to hear about the new songs you'll be performing." But Reba wasn't done. Years of professionalism, of biting her tongue during loaded interviews and playing nice for the sake of promotion, had finally reached their limit. Jenna, sensing she was losing control, tried to salvage the conversation with a dose of polished composure. "Reba, I think we're getting off on the wrong foot here," she said, her voice taking on that smooth, practiced tone of media training. "My questions come from a place of genuine curiosity about the industry you've helped shape." Reba's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Genuine curiosity," she echoed. "Honey, I've done thousands of interviews in my career. I know the difference between genuine curiosity and a setup. What I'm curious about is why your producers thought it was a good idea to blindside me with this nonsense when I came here in good faith to talk about my music." One of the co-hosts, sensing Jenna was drowning, stepped in with what he clearly hoped was a diplomatic save. "Reba, we're all huge fans of your work here. I think what Jenna was trying to get at is just the broader conversation about how country music has evolved." Reba turned her gaze toward him. Her expression softened slightly, but her tone remained firm and unwavering. "I appreciate that," she said, "and I'm happy to discuss the evolution of country music. But there's a difference between discussing evolution and questioning someone's integrity. When you suggest that artists like me have compromised our values for mainstream appeal, you're not just talking about music anymore, you're talking about character." Jenna, desperate to regain footing, pushed forward instead of backing off. "But surely you can understand why some fans feel that country music has lost some of its edge, some of its authenticity," she said. "There are artists today who barely sound country at all." It was exactly the wrong thing to say, and everyone in the studio seemed to know it, except Jenna herself. Reba's eyes narrowed to slits, and when she spoke again, her voice dropped to a dangerously calm tone. "Are you comparing me to those artists? Because if you are, you clearly haven't done your homework. I've been fighting to preserve the heart and soul of country music, while some of these morning show hosts have been learning how to read a teleprompter." The insult landed like a slap. Jenna's face flushed crimson, and for a moment, her polished television persona cracked wide open. "That's completely uncalled for," she snapped. "Reba, I'm a professional journalist, and I have every right to ask challenging questions." Reba's voice rose again, echoing off the studio walls. "Professional journalist," she said with biting sarcasm, gesturing around the brightly lit set with its cozy furniture and coffee mugs. "This isn't Meet the Press, sweetheart. This is a morning entertainment show. I came here to entertain your viewers and talk about my tour. Instead, you're trying to turn this into some kind of gotcha moment for your highlight reel." The other co-host was visibly squirming now, glancing off camera as if searching for an escape hatch. "Maybe we could take a quick commercial break and regroup," she offered weakly. But Reba wasn't finished. Decades in the entertainment industry had given her an almost instinctive radar for manipulation, and she wasn't about to let it slide. "No, let's keep going," she said firmly. "Since we're having such a meaningful conversation about authenticity, let's talk about the authenticity of ambushing a guest with questions that weren't discussed beforehand." Jenna's composure shattered. Her next words came out defensive, high-pitched, and shaky. "I don't have to clear my questions with your publicity team," she shot back. "This is journalism, and journalists ask hard questions." Reba's laugh was cold and cutting. "Hard questions," she repeated. "Honey, you want to ask hard questions? Let's talk about how morning television has dumbed down American culture. Let's talk about how shows like this prioritize manufactured drama over real content. Let's talk about how you're more interested in creating viral moments than having genuine conversations with your guests." The studio had descended into complete chaos. Producers were gesturing frantically from behind the cameras, trying to figure out how to contain the live disaster unfolding before them. The camera operators kept rolling, knowing that cutting the feed would only confirm how bad things had gotten. No one dared move or speak. This was live television at its most volatile. Reba McEntire.com, but blazing with righteous fury, was in total command of the room. Jenna, perhaps realizing too late that she had pushed too far, tried to change tactics. But by then, the interview had already gone somewhere no amount of PR spin could ever fix. "Look, Reba, I clearly touched a nerve here, and that wasn't my intention. Can we start over?" Jenna asked, her voice wavering between apology and control. Reba shook her head slowly, her expression hard. "Start over," she repeated, her voice low and filled with disgust. "You don't get to attack someone's professional integrity and then ask for a do-over when they fight back. That's not how the real world works, even if it might be how things work in your little television bubble." The male co-host, desperate to restore some order, spoke up. "Reba, we really do respect your career and everything you've accomplished. Maybe we can focus on the positive aspects of your current projects." But Reba turned to him with a look of disbelief. "Respect my career," she said sharply. "Your co-host just spent the last 10 minutes implying I'm a sellout, and you're talking about respect. If this is how you treat the guests you respect, I'd hate to see how you treat the ones you don't." Jenna's face flushed red with embarrassment and anger as she tried to reassert her authority. "Reba, I'm the host of this show, and I have a responsibility to ask the questions our viewers want answered." That was the final straw. Reba's expression went cold, and when she spoke, each word landed with deliberate force. "Your viewers want answered. Let me tell you something about viewers, little girl. I've been connecting with audiences longer than you've been alive. I know what people want, and it's not watching some television host with delusions of grandeur try to tear down someone who's actually accomplished something in this world." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the faint hum of the control room monitors seemed to vanish. Jenna looked like she'd been slapped. Her co-hosts sat frozen, their faces pale. Reba, however, looked like a woman who had finally had enough. "You know what?" she said, standing up. "I came here as a professional courtesy to promote my tour your show." Her voice was ice as she loomed over the seated hosts. "Let me tell you something about shows, honey. A real show is what I put on for 50,000 people in an arena. A real show is connecting with an audience through genuine emotion and honest storytelling. This," she swept her hand around the brightly lit studio with disdain. "This is just television." Jenna scrambled to her feet, refusing to be looked down on. "You're being incredibly disrespectful right now," she snapped. "We invited you here to give you a platform to promote your work." Reba's laugh was sharp and cutting. "A platform," she repeated. "I don't need your platform. I've sold more albums than most artists will ever dream of. I've had my own television show, my own production company, and I've built an empire on talent and hard work, on reading other people's words off a teleprompter." The male co-host stood, hands raised in surrender. "Ladies, please, we're live on television. Can we take this down a notch?" Reba turned to him with a glare that could melt steel. "We're live on television," she repeated. "Well then, Let me give your viewers something worth watching. Let me show them what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness and professionalism for a pushover. Jenna, flushed and trembling but fueled by indignation, stepped closer. You think you can come on my show and talk to me like I'm some intern? I've been doing television for years. Reba's eyebrows rose in mock surprise. Oh well then, you must be an expert, she said dryly. Tell me, in all those years of television, did anyone ever teach you the basic courtesy of treating your guests with respect? Or were you too busy learning how to create drama for ratings? Asterisk, the female co-host, looking close to tears, tried one last time. Reba, Jeanette, please. We can work this out. We're all professionals here. Reba spun toward her so fast the woman flinched. Professionals, she echoed. A professional doesn't ambush a guest with loaded questions. A professional doesn't manufacture controversy where none exists. And a professional certainly doesn't sit there in silence while their co-host attacks someone, only to call for peace when the person fights back. Jenna's face was crimson now, her voice shaking with fury. You're acting like a diva, Reba, like you're too good to answer tough questions. Asterisk, that word, diva, seemed to ignite something deep in Reba. Her demeanor shifted, her voice lowering to a controlled, dangerous calm. Diva, she repeated quietly. That's what you call a woman who refuses to be disrespected. That's what you call someone who won't let you steamroll them for your own agenda. She took a deliberate step closer, forcing Jenna to step back. Let me tell you what a diva really is, sweetheart. A diva is someone who shows up prepared, who treats people with respect until they prove they don't deserve it, and who isn't afraid to call out unprofessional behavior when she sees it. A diva is someone who's earned the right to demand basic courtesy through decades of hard work and success. So if that makes me a diva, then I wear that label with pride. Asterisk, Jenna tried to recover, her voice trembling. I was just doing my job. Reba's voice rose again, fierce and unrelenting. Your job. Your job is to entertain and inform your viewers, not to attack your guests for cheap headlines. Your job is to create content that adds value to people's lives, not to tear down someone who's actually accomplished something. If this is how you do your job, then maybe you need to find a new line of work. The male co-host intervened again, voice shaky. Reba, I think everyone's emotions are running high here. Maybe we should all take a breath. Asterisk, Reba's eyes flashed. Emotions running high. She repeated, her tone dripping with sarcasm. You're damn right, emotions are running high. When someone questions my integrity, my authenticity, and my commitment to my craft, you better believe emotions are going to run high. I've spent 40 years in this business, and I've never once compromised who I am for anyone or anything. Jenna, desperate and flailing, made one final attempt to hit back. Well, maybe that's the problem, she said. Maybe you're too set in your ways to see how the industry has changed. Asterisk, the words hung in the air like a death sentence. Everyone in the studio knew instantly that Jenna had gone too far. Reba's face went eerily still. When she spoke again, her voice was low, deliberate, and terrifyingly calm. To set in my ways. She repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. Let me tell you about being set in my ways, little girl. I'm set in the way of treating people with respect. I'm set in the way of honoring my commitments and showing up prepared. I'm set in the way of putting my heart and soul into every song I sing and every performance I give. If those are outdated concepts to you, then we have nothing more to talk about. Asterisk, with that, she turned and began walking toward the edge of the interview area. Panic rippled through the control room. This was live television, and their marquee guest was about to walk off set. There would be no editing this out, no clever spin, no PR patchwork. Millions of viewers were witnessing Reba McEntire take a stand, raw, unapologetic, and absolutely unforgettable. Where are you going? Jenna called after her, and there was actual desperation in her voice. "We're not finished here." Reba stopped and turned back. And the look she gave Jenna was one the younger woman would probably remember for the rest of her career. "Oh, we're finished. All right," Reba said, her voice steady but sharp as glass. "We were finished the moment you decided to turn what should have been a pleasant conversation into an interrogation. We were finished when you chose manufactured drama over basic human decency." The female co-host tried to intervene, her tone pleading. "Reba, please don't leave like this. We can fix this." Reba shook her head slowly. "Honey, some things can't be fixed. Some bridges, once you burn them, stay burned. And some people, once they show you who they really are, you believe them." Jenna stood there, her career flashing before her eyes as one of country music's most respected figures prepared to walk out on her show. She made one final, desperate attempt to regain control. But before she could speak, Reba did something that would be replayed across social media for months. She reached up, unclipped her microphone with deliberate precision, and let it fall to the studio floor with a heavy thud that echoed in the stunned silence. The sound snapped everyone back to reality, but it was too late. The damage had been done. "Reba, wait." The male co-host called out, but she was already moving with a measured, purposeful stride that left no doubt she was done. Her exit wasn't frantic, was regal, final, and full of the quiet authority that only true confidence carries. Every step communicated exactly what she thought of the chaos she was leaving behind. Jenna stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing as if trying to find words that wouldn't come. The cameras kept rolling because no one knew what else to do. Morning shows were supposed to be safe and predictable, never the stage for a meltdown like this. "Ladies and gentlemen," the female co-host stammered. Turning awkwardly to the audience, "We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back." But Reba had already reached the edge of the studio. She paused for a moment, looking back at the wreckage of the Scene 3 hosts standing in shock. Producers scrambling, the air thick with disbelief. "You know what's really sad about all this?" she said, her voice carrying effortlessly across the room, even without a mic. "I actually used to respect this show. I used to think it represented something positive in television. But I guess I was wrong about a lot of things." Jenna finally found her voice, though it trembled with frustration and embarrassment. "Reba, you're embarrassing yourself. This is going to be all over the news." Reba laughed, the sound genuine and amused this time. "Embarrassing myself? Honey, the only thing embarrassing here is watching grown adults act like children on national television. And as for this being all over the news, well, at least it'll be honest coverage for once." The male co-host made one last desperate attempt to save face. "Reba, please, just come back and sit down. We can talk this through like adults." Reba turned back toward him, her expression incredulous. "Talk this through like adults. I tried that. I tried to be professional and courteous, even after being ambushed with questions that had nothing to do with why I came here. But apparently, adult conversation isn't what sells commercial time these days." She turned then to the cameras, addressing the millions watching live. "To anyone out there who supports my music, who's come to my concerts, who's followed my career, know this: I will never compromise my values or my integrity for anyone. Not for record labels, not for television networks, and certainly not for morning show hosts who think they can build their careers by tearing down others." The studio was silent except for the faint hum of equipment and whispered chaos from the control room. Even Jenna seemed to realize that saying anything else now would only make things worse. "I've been in this business for 4 decades, Reba continued, still speaking directly to the audience. "And I've learned that success isn't just about talent or luck, it's about character. It's about how you treat people on and off camera. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable." She looked around one last time, meeting the eyes of the stunned hosts and crew. I came here today to talk about my music, my tours, and the things that bring people joy. Instead, I got a reminder of why I prefer the honesty of a concert stage to the manufactured drama of a television studio. Please don't go, the female co-host said again, her voice trembling. We can make this right. Reba's expression softened for just a moment, but her resolve didn't waver. Sweetheart, some things can't be made right with apologies and do-overs. Some things require accountability and change, and I don't see either of those happening here today. She turned and began walking toward the exit, her head held high, every inch the legend she was. Everyone in that studio knew they were witnessing history, something that would be dissected, replayed, and talked about for years to come. This has been real educational, Reba called over her shoulder as she reached the door. I hope your viewers got something valuable out of it, because they certainly deserve better than what they witnessed here today. And with that, she was gone. The cameras lingered for a few seconds on the stunned faces of the hosts, before someone finally cut to commercial, when the broadcast faded to black. The silence that followed was thick and absolute. The three hosts sat frozen, looking like survivors of a natural disaster. Producers rushed in, voices overlapping in panic, trying to figure out how to contain the biggest on-air catastrophe the show had ever seen. Jenna slumped in her chair, realization dawning she had gone head-to-head with Reba McEntire and lost, spectacularly, in front of millions. What just happened? The male co-host whispered, though everyone could hear him. What had happened was simple. Reba McEntire had reminded the world that integrity isn't negotiable, that respect has to be earned, and that sometimes the most professional thing you can do is walk away from unprofessional behavior. In those few, unforgettable minutes, she'd shown that even in the glossy, tightly controlled world of morning television, authenticity and dignity could still triumph over manufactured controversy. The aftermath would be swift clips going viral, viewers rallying behind Reba, networks scrambling for damage control, but in that studio, in that moment, one thing was undeniable. Reba McEntire had walked out with her head high, her principles intact, and her legacy stronger than ever.